Welcome to Accelerate My Practice. So glad you could join me here today. Today I want to talk about the retirement of NBA star Ray Allen. And I realize he hasn't played for a little bit because he was kind of sitting there waiting to see if there was going to be an opportunity left, and he formally retired just last week on November 1st. And so having read his letter he wrote to himself, I wanted to kind of cover this content because it seems very, very appropriate for someone who's played for such a long duration at such a high level. There's got to be lessons that can be learned there about how do you perform at a high level for the long term. And that's what we're all trying to figure out, right? How do we get lasting change for ourselves over the long haul that we can enjoy the benefits of this whole journey the way that it's intended to be, which is, seeing the reward of our hard work for a long time. So, he comes into the NBA in 1996, if you can imagine that. He got to actually play against Michael Jordan. And if you think about that, Michael Jordan is like a figment of our past imaginations. It's hard to believe, how long this guy's career was. And I don't know how long his career was compared to, say, a Jordan or somebody else, but it's got to be up there in terms of duration at 18 years. And so he comes in as, the number 5, first round, 5th draft pick of 1996, I believe it was, drafted by the Minnesota Timberwolves at the time, and does very, very well. Bounced around to a few different teams. But over that time, he was a 2-time NBA champion, 10-time All-Star, and then he has the most 3 points. He's made the most 3 points in both playoffs and regular season games. He holds the record, which is pretty impressive. I mean, to be able to play again at that high level and be the guy who, right, it's the three-pointer. It's either the three-pointer or the dunk. Who cares about the rest? So to be the guy who can shoot and holds the record for the most three-pointers in both playoff and regular season game for a career, pretty big statement. 40% of the time when this guy threw the ball up from behind the three-point line, he sunk it. 40% of the time. That's outrageous. How many of us can say that 40% of the time we set off to do something, we succeed? And for those of you that might be sitting there patting yourself on the back going, oh, I'm like 80%. You know what I would say to that? You're not challenging yourself. You're not trying and pushing yourself to higher limits, because we can all have a high success rate at easy things. But, think about the three-point line. They moved that thing back 10 or 15 years ago. Another 3 or 4 or 5 foot or whatever it was, I don't know the exact distance, but they moved it back at some point and made it harder, and yet in his career he's still doing well. So he writes this letter to himself in his retirement entitled A Letter to My 13-Year-Old Self, and which I really love. I'm willing to bet this guy's a Stephen Covey fan, because Stephen Covey wrote in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People 30 years ago or whenever it was published. Imagine you're at your own funeral and you're standing up and you're listening to people give your eulogy. What are they going to say? What would you want them to say? Fast forward to your funeral and you're hearing someone give your eulogy. Are they saying what you want them to say about you? Or is there a lack of congruency between who you are and who you want to be? And when I read this letter that he wrote to himself as a 13-year-old, it's interesting, and obviously he didn't write it when he was 13. He wrote it reflectively. But it's a powerful letter. I mean, he deals with everything from overcoming challenge to race issues to you name it, he's addressed it. And so some of the things that I wanted to pull out and highlight here were pretty powerful to me and to some others as we were collaborating, putting this show together. So one of the things that was interesting is he starts off with, don't ever put yourself in the position to wish you could hop in a time machine, Ray. You need to stay focused because things will only become more complicated as you have more success. So for a moment, if you're new into dentistry, I want you to hear me. You're just coming out of school, perhaps. You're getting started in your dental career. You're so excited about stuff. You see some technology things. You see this bright future. You're dreaming about what it's going to look like. I think his point here is very, very prudent. Life will get more complicated, because imagine now you're just starting dental school. And for those of you who might be in your 40s and 50s listening to this, think back to when you just came out of dental school. Maybe you weren't married. Maybe you didn't have kids. You certainly didn't have the pile of debt that maybe you have now. You hadn't accumulated all the toys, the trappings of success, also known as debt in some cases, that complicate our lives. You know, how often do we wish we could make our lives more simple? One of my favorite things that Steve Jobs said before he passed away about Apple, and the challenge that he found was he worked really hard to make everything with Apple, their products, clean and simple. That sounds easy. But then you think about a power cord as an example, and I think I've even shown it here on a show before. You think about the power cord you use on your MacBook if you have one. And not only is there a little box of a power cord, but then there's these two little tabs that flip up that you can wrap your little power cord around. And then there's a little hooky thing that you can hook it on so it stays there. As compared to my Dell that I had before I had a Mac, which had this huge black box of a converter, and then had this like crazy heavy 14 gauge wire plug-in that would plug into the wall. And if you wanted to travel with that thing, it was like this massive, huge mess. It was unreal. It was unruly. So clean and simple. Clean and simple is difficult. But think of how many people, using the sports metaphor, they come in and they want to practice their sky hook or something, as opposed to just practicing a free throw. Clean and simple. Because when it comes down to it, what matters is how you perform in the end. One of his other quotes he put in here, I have to find real quickly, that I thought was really awesome, is, you know, in every locker room you'll be in, everyone will say the right things. Everyone will be willing to sacrifice whatever it takes to win a title. But this game isn't a movie. It's not about the man. It's not being the man in the fourth quarter. It's not about talk. It's getting in your work every single day when nobody is watching. And you know, the difference between that fourth quarter performance is all the preparation that the person does that leads up to that performance. You know, so many people just say, hey, I've got, you know, this other player's got God-given talent. Well, maybe someone does. But the difference between the person who has a career like Ray Allen had and maybe somebody else is the fact that he prepped so meticulously. His challenge was to see who could be the first one to the gym and the last one to the gym, not who could do the prettiest sky hook. It didn't matter. What mattered was when the game was on the line, who could put the ball in the basket. And that all comes back to preparation. Because when you prep, if you can prep it and it becomes muscle memory, you don't have to think about it. Because under the pressure of you know, it's the last 10 seconds of the game and you're going to get the ball and are you going to choke, muscle memory had better take over. If it doesn't, you're not going to succeed because this memory will get in the way of it and you'll choke under the pressure. We see lots of people choke under the pressure. And those who choke under the pressure have not made it second nature. And you guys all know what I'm talking about, right? Imagine you're giving your first injection in your dental office and you're like, oh man, how am I going to do this? And you're sitting there shaking, and you're like, and you're scared to death. And now you fast forward 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years, however long your career's been, and now you're like thinking about your grocery list, and you're not even thinking about how to give an injection because you've done it so many times, it's become second nature. So the key in life is how can we make things second nature or subconscious? Or use the reticular activating system so we don't have to think about it. Because if we don't have to think about it, it just happens. You know, my wife, every single morning, the alarm goes off at 5. She doesn't even set the alarm because there's this new feature in the iPhone called bedtime. And it just goes off every single day at the exact same time. So she no longer even has to think about setting her alarm. Now compare and contrast that to me who's like, I think I'm going to sleep in today because I'm tired. My wife doesn't do that. She's on the treadmill every single morning at 5:20. She's got a routine that she's in. And if you read this article, you'll hear him talk about her boring routine. It's the boring routine that creates the repetition that allows us to become very good at what we do. Some other things I thought were interesting that Ray said. Most nights you won't go out. Your friends will ask why. You don't drink alcohol, ever. People will look at you funny. When you're in the NBA, you don't always play cards with the boys. Some people will assume you're not being a good teammate. You'll even have to put your family on the back burner for your job. This is someone who's dedicated to being successful. And, you know, I think about his statement about putting the family on the back burner, and I struggle with that statement because to me, family's so important. But by the same token, if you can't provide for your family, what good's it do you? while prepping for this, we're talking about Allen Iverson, one of the greats of the NBA, broke out of his gourd, has no money left. I don't know what that means. I've not done the research, but apparently has done so poorly because of all of his shenanigans in life, as sort of described there, that now that, one of the perhaps best NBA players, who's not even been out of the NBA that long, is broke. Probably the highest paid one for some time as well. It's just real interesting. I also loved this statement. But if I'm being real with you, Ray, what you'll realize after you win your first title is that thrill is fleeting. The vindication is fleeting. If you only chase that high, you're going to end up very depressed. And I think about that as well, because that's something that speaks to me personally, right? I'm wired that sort of way. I want the thrill of stuff. It's the next great thrill. It's hunting and shooting a bigger animal. It's being on stage in front of a bigger crowd. It's, back in the day, it was getting a nicer car, a faster car, a shinier car. And you know what I learned? It was fleeting. It didn't matter. It didn't hold anything for me. It took me a long time to learn that. I wish I would have learned it when I was 13 by someone having written myself a letter. I like this. This is sort of funny. So in 2013, June 2013, he wins the NBA title, right? So they all go back and they party some. I doubt he drank based on the previous statement. But they all party some. He wakes up at 7:30 in the morning. He just can't sleep. And all of his friends are passed out all over his house. He tippy-toes out. And what's he do? He goes for a drive. Where does he end up? He ends up at his dental office. These things always come full circle. And it was sort of funny. What he says here is, this is what success looks like for you. You're the kind of guy who goes to the dentist the morning after winning the NBA title. And his dentist is like, dude, you just won the NBA title. What are you doing here? He's like, I couldn't sleep. I need to get some stuff done. Do you have time? Can you squeeze me in? I mean, can you imagine having this guy walk in? Can you imagine having him sit in your chair? I mean, like his knees would be at the end of the chair and his feet would be like, he wouldn't fit in most people's rooms. But this is a guy who's so meticulous and such a pattern in life, has been getting up for so long, so early in the morning to go to the gym, that even after winning the NBA title, he gets up, he's like, well, I probably should take a break from the gym. What should I do? Well, let me go see the dentist. It's incredible. One of his other quotes here, or that he wrote to himself, I really mean it from the bottom of my heart. Life is about a journey, not the destination. And that journey will change you as a person. And there's no doubt about that. I look at my own life, and most of you have heard my story. My journey has changed my life for sure. And thankfully for the better. Allen Iverson, I would say, the journey has changed him not for the better. And now he's got a challenge. How can he go back and earn back what he had? Because he can't do it in the NBA. So will he go prep and become a motivational speaker and be someone who can get on stage and tell his story of transformation and redemption? Man, I don't know. Does he have the dedication to do that? Maybe, maybe not. It'll be interesting to see how this story unfolds for him. But as I sit here thinking to myself about how many of us are chasing that next shiny object, myself included, especially my past. How many of us chase that next shiny object and we forget it's not a destination? It's not, I'll be happy when. Because if you're after, I'll be happy when, you'll never be happy. But if instead you're happy now and you're looking to continue this through this journey called life, you will be happy. You'll always be happy, and every single day. But how many of us instead, we sit here thinking, I'll be happy when? When never comes. I'll be happy someday. Someday's not on a calendar. Look on one. I challenge you to find someday on a calendar. It's not there. But so many of us, and myself included, are like, hey, I'll be happy when this happens. And the reality is you won't be. The reality is if you don't have appreciation for what you have now, you won't be. So as I talk to somebody who might be 5 or 10 or 15 years now from your career, I want you to really think about what would make you happy. Is retirement going to be the thing that makes you happy? Because if you just go killing yourself to get to that point of retirement, to now where you fall across the finish line, you might fall across it and die. And sadly, I see that sometimes. Or they get across the finish line and now they're divorced. Their kids don't talk to them. They have retirement or they wouldn't be retired. Or maybe they're having to retire for health reasons. How happy are you now? Because you said you'd be happy when you retired. So my challenge to all of you is to really contemplate what makes happiness. What would allow you to have that sense of gratitude? What would you write to yourself when you were 13? It'd probably be a great exercise to actually do. Don't sit here and think, yeah, that'd be interesting. I should do that. Because if you're sitting here thinking, yeah, I should do that, you won't do it. But if you actually go, I will do this, you pull out your calendar, you put it on your calendar right now, and you schedule it for Friday perhaps, and you sit down and you write a letter to yourself, it might be eye-opening. And here's the final challenge for that exercise. Now sit down and read it to your 13-year-old child. The one who still has that opportunity, did not have to live with the regrets of the past. The one that you can still influence, who can maybe avoid some of those challenges and pains through learning from you. Now, I realize kids don't always want to learn from their parents. But you know what? If you sit down in a heartfelt way and you share an experience like this, the odds of them soaking it in are a lot better. So my challenge to you, if you have 5, 10 years left before you retire, how are you going to finish those years up? Are you going to go out with a bang, having a blast every day, happy every day, or just happy when? Because I don't think it'll work. The last quote I want to share that he put in here, to me, really was powerful. He said, do you want to fit in, or do you want to embark on a lonely pursuit of greatness? Because if you want to be great, you're going to stand out, stick out, you're going to be lonely in some ways. Because the rest of the world's not wired for greatness. The majority of the world is wired for mediocrity, sadly. How many of us are willing to settle? My relationship, my marriage isn't good, but we've been married a long time, so I'm just it's okay. Translation, I just settled. Instead of going, hey, what could I do? What could I do to change it? Not what could that person do? What could I do to influence that person? I believe anytime you sit down with somebody, one of the two of you is going to influence somebody. Either you're going to be pulled up or you're going to be pulled down, depending on who you are. If you're both optimists and high energy like me, you're both going to fire each other up, which is awesome. So the question becomes, do you want to settle for mediocrity, or would you rather be lonely and surrounded by greatness? Now, lonely doesn't mean you don't have anyone around you. Lonely just means when you're around average, the average person who's willing to settle for mediocrity, you're going to be lonely. You're going to feel like you don't fit in. I think back to my early career in dentistry, and I used to sit in these sales meetings when I'd work for Patterson. And I used to sit there and listen to what everyone was saying. And I used to just scratch my head going, man, I don't get it. I don't get what they're saying. And I felt lonely, so much so that I sat in the back corner of the room for years. And the irony of it, and I don't say this to toot my own horn, I was the highest performer in this office. So I'm performing at the highest level, putting out the biggest numbers, and yet I'm sitting in the back corner going, man, I don't fit. And I now know why I didn't fit. I was pursuing something different. I had a different vision for myself. At the time, I didn't understand the vision, but I knew that I had prepared myself for something different. So I was embarking on a lonely pursuit of greatness. Now, I don't say that to say that I'm at greatness yet, because I'm probably not. Pretty sure, actually. I got a long ways to go, but I'm excited every single day to get up and learn more and see how I can grow, how I can improve my marriage, my relationship with my kids, my relationship with my teammates, my relationship with my clients. It's awesome. I hope you live life with that sort of passion. And if you do, you won't have to wait to be happy when. You'll be happy every single day. So my homework to you, write a letter to yourself. If you want, share it with your coach. Share it with them and say, hey, how can I accomplish this now? Because that's your coach's job. I don't know what the this is for you. Maybe it's a professional goal, a personal goal, a financial goal, a health and fitness goal, a relationship goal. I don't know what it is. But there's going to be something that you want to have relative to greatness in your life. Great relationship with your children, a great relationship with your spouse, a better financial existence. Greatness is not something that is only reserved for an NBA All-Star. Greatness is something every one of us can live, just in a different form. I hope you've enjoyed our show. I look forward to seeing you next week, 8 o'clock on Mountain, 10 o'clock on the East Coast. Till then, have a great day. What if you could have the practice of your dreams? What's holding you back? Imagine a life where you have everything you ever wanted.